Hey, it's Shirley B, and I believe we all have the power to change our lives for the better. And my goal is to help you believe and know that. Your mindset is your power, and change can sometimes feel overwhelming. So instead of focusing on all the huge things that you may feel you need to do in life, let's instead focus on small mindset shifts, small actions that anyone can take, so that little by little and piece by piece, you will change your life. Thank you for tuning in for this third podcast, or maybe it's your first one with me. Either way, thank you for taking this time for yourself. We've talked about making small changes, and we've talked about being consistent with those changes. So today, I think we should focus on making the time for those changes and ultimately making time for yourself. I feel like I can hear many of you already. I don't even have time for everyone and everything in my life, so how am I going to make time for myself? Well, that's the point. Why do we go so out of our way to make time for everyone else, but not ourselves? If we're not at our best, then it seems logical that the time that we're offering others isn't even the best that we can offer. I'm not discounting that you have a lot on your plate. Especially we women take on the responsibility of everyone else's needs, their emotions. We take on the responsibility for their happiness and their peace. And I shouldn't even say we women, it's we caretakers and caregivers. So let's talk about that. And let me share what I had to change, and maybe it resonates with you. If you find yourself always on the go, working your butt off at work, working just as hard at home, just constantly busy with no time to just chill and be quiet, you feel like you have no choice and there's just so much to do. You can't really slow down in any area of your life. It's just a constant battle to try to keep up. I mean, you're probably listening to this podcast while you're doing laundry, feeding the kids, and writing the grocery list. Or maybe you're listening on the train or bus as you're heading into work, which is a great use of that time. But not if you're also working and looking through your calendar for the day, trying to figure out what you can move and how to get everything done. Hey, this podcast is not that long. That's why I purposely make them bite size. I mean, will things really fall apart if you just stop everything else, stop multitasking, sit for 15 minutes, take a deep breath, and just listen? You can, you know. And hopefully by the end of this podcast, you'll feel you can. I'll be honest, I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. But even if you're a man, this could very well apply to you, and maybe even more when it comes to working so hard to get ahead at the office. Or maybe listening, you'll find yourself thinking that this really reminds you of your partner, and maybe you wonder how you can help them. So, why do we feel we have so much to do all at once, all at the same time? I mean, in the US, we definitely are known to put money and work first, but is that it? Or are we really just putting pressure on ourselves? You work so hard, and yet you feel like you're still not getting ahead enough to take a step back, or you just feel like you need more. It's never enough. Something I'd like to challenge you with is why. Why do you feel you have to do everything yourself? Why do you keep pushing yourself so hard? Maybe at your work, you feel like you need to keep proving yourself. You need to get ahead at work to get ahead in life financially or career wise. And maybe it's that you know what you're doing in your job, and trusting someone else to help and have them screw it up just isn't worth it, so you just do it yourself anyway. Or maybe you feel like you just have to work harder to show you're just as good as anyone else, and you can't show that you might need a break or that you just need a minute to get your head straight, and that might show you can't compete with others. But aren't we all human? I mean, don't we all need to chill and get our heads straight too? We all do. And maybe at home, you feel like you can just do things so much quicker and better than your partner or your family members. They don't clean like you. They don't organize like you. They sure as heck don't multitask like you. And by the time you explain what needs to be done, and yes, take pictures of things that you need to get at the grocery store so that they buy the right thing, you just do it yourself. Now, of course, if you're a single parent, you have no family nearby, and it's all on you, I get that, and you may not have other options. So, if that's you, how do you even think about adding any time for yourself? And you're probably feeling like you're already in negative load time already, so taking any time for yourself feels impossible. And I can certainly understand that, and I don't want to minimize what you're doing. But I would challenge you to really figure out if it is in fact possible, even just a little bit. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, I work hard because that's how I was raised. My parents worked hard, they instilled in me to work hard for myself and my family, and I think that's wonderful. A strong work ethic is to be admired. But when working hard and taking care of everyone else at work and at home interferes and prevents you from taking care of yourself, that's what I want to focus on. Not to be selfish and not care about others, but just to be more self aware. So there's a couple things I'd like to delve into a little bit further. One is, are you working this hard for the right reasons? What is your why, and is it worth your peace? And the second is, if you are in fact doing it for all the right reasons, maybe you're trying to pay off bills, you're having to raise your kids and take care of aging parents, you're going to school and working to get a degree, I still say you need to give yourself a little bit of time each day, something just for you, not for your career, not for your family, not for your job, just you. And I'm not talking about hours out of the day. If 15 or 20 minutes is all you can do, then let's make it the best darn 20 minutes you can. And some days, that's all I feel I have, and that's okay. I try to set time aside in the morning to do a little reading, and some days I've got about 7 minutes, but I'm still going to do it because it makes me feel better. Either way, you need time for self care and to figure out why you're doing what you're doing. And maybe there's some healing that you need to be doing, or you need to take care of yourself so you can stay strong physically and mentally to continue to help your family for all those right reasons that you want to keep going for. So, let me tell you a little bit of my story and what I thought were the right reasons, but eventually found out there was a lot more underneath. For me, my parents definitely instilled a strong work ethic in us, and I've always worked. I volunteered when I was a young teenager, and I've had a paying job and at times multiple jobs since I was 16. I was always the one who said, what else can I do? How else can I help? And while I still do that, I now know and respect my personal limits, especially mentally. But I was either working hard because I lived on my own at an early age and had only myself to rely on, or when I got married and had kids, of course, it was to help ensure everyone was taken care of financially, emotionally, physically, in every way. I worked my way up the ladder at work, and about 9 years ago, we had a huge project, and I loved being the go to person for so many things. I knew how much I was adding to the project, and it fed me. It fed my ego, and I was proud of being that go to person. I was working late, working weekends. Thankfully, I had a husband who was very supportive during the whole thing. And as soon as I got home, I would make time for kids and ensure that they got what they needed. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. And we all commiserated at work about how much there was to do, but it was us. We were going to make this succeed, and I was handling everything amazingly. Again, so I thought. Until one morning at 3 a.m., I woke up with the worst pain in my heart and chest that I have ever felt. I woke up my husband and said, we've got to go to the hospital. I think I'm having a heart attack. We drive to the hospital. My blood pressure is really high. They do an EKG, blood tests, and a bunch of other tests. Now, I've had kids both C-section and completely natural with no drugs, but this pain in my heart was the worst pain I had ever felt, especially if I tried to lay down or move from an upright position. Finally, after about 4 hours, they diagnosed me with pericarditis, which is the inflammation of the sac that surrounds your heart, which can be caused by, guess what? Extreme stress. And they give me a prescription of a megadose of ibuprofen. So it's just after 8 in the morning. I still can't move from an upright position or lay down. I'm still in pain. But what's my response? Is it, let me get discharged so I can go home and rest and take care of myself? No. Now that I know I'm not going to die, can you please discharge me so I can get back to work? I got stuff to do. I didn't even take the day off to recover, never mind having had little sleep. All I could think was, this project was so close to launch, and darn it, they need me. Now, let me be clear. No one at work was asking me to work harder. No one was asking me to literally put myself in the hospital for work. That was 100% all me. They didn't even know that this had happened. I mean, talk about ego and screwed up priorities. I'm like, look at me, I'm Superwoman. And no, no, you're not. And I'm sorry, everyone listening, but you can't have it all. You can't do it all and be it all. No one can. Not without a lot of help, anyway. For most of us, it's an illusion. We keep going, and all you're doing is making drowning look like swimming. But something's got to give. It always does, and most times it's you that gives. Now, I'd like to say my life changed after that emergency room visit, but it took a few more life changes to figure out a few things. But why did it have to take so long to understand my why? Why did I feel the need to be in charge, to do it all, to not rely on anyone else to help? And then, by the way, resent them when they didn't help. It all had to do with control. So, fast forward a few years ago when I've had time to read, listen, learn, reflect, look inward a little bit, and I realized how much my need for control was feeding into not giving to myself. So here I am thinking that controlling everything and everyone around me was helping me to get everything done that needed to be done. But after a lot of inward soul searching, I found that my need for control is more tied to feeling that I can only do for me, that I can only take care of me. I did not fully trust anyone else to do that for me. And it wasn't until a couple more years to really see that and to see how tied my worth was to my accomplishments, to being the center of everything. So showing off that I could take on so much, look how much I can do compared to everyone else. And once I slowed down a bit and spent a lot of time alone, I realized I didn't like the quiet, and I was using the busy to keep me distracted. My quiet was not in stillness and in solitude. It was now too busy with thoughts in my head. And that's the thing about working so hard. Sometimes, if you're constantly busy and you don't have time to sit with yourself, that's what a lot of us are trying to avoid without even realizing it, myself included. Maybe we just don't want to be too still or too quiet because then the voices in our heads that say we need to do more to be enough, to do more to become indispensable, and then they need you and they won't leave you. Well, it's the echoes usually from childhood, and it's when you slow down that they become louder. And as I have found, the longer you try to quiet them, the more they come out in other ways. So maybe it's no longer just working too much, but now you're not eating healthy. You're drinking every day because you feel like you've earned that at the end of the day. But it all catches up eventually until one day you're sick and tired. Your soul is not being fed by all these external things. You're tired of doing for everyone else, and something has to give, and you have nothing else to give because you're so busy giving to everyone else to make sure they know how important you are. But you're already important. You always have been. And you don't have to prove that to anyone, including yourself. You may be thinking, but it makes me happy to take care of everyone else. That's how I show my love. Again, if you're truly in your soul happy about that, that's great. But if you're not, or if you're doing it out of guilt, or you're at the same time resenting the fact that you have to give so much and not getting what you need back, maybe the one little change you can make today is to reflect and really ask, why are you overachieving or overworking? If it's to prove you're worth it, that you're worth keeping, you're worth loving, you're worth living, then take that in. Just sit with it until you feel ready to take the next step to know why. This knowledge may lead you to take more steps and changes, and I won't kid you, looking inward and sometimes having to look back to find out your why could become the hardest work that you've ever done, and it will likely be painful to pull apart the layers that you've built up. But I cannot stress enough how necessary it is to slow down and do that work. Once you learn that you have always been worthy, that you've always been enough, and that you can, and in fact, must love yourself unconditionally. Your path will be so much more peaceful. Now, you may be saying to yourself, this has nothing to do with me. I'm working hard because I love what I do, and I need to do this to pay my bills, to keep my family going. And that's wonderful to love what you do and feel that sense of purpose. But in either case, I would say those are things for others. And I'm not saying you just slack at work. I personally only know one way to work, and that's to do my best. And of course, there will be times when you have a work deadline, a family crisis, or something that requires you to lean in more. But I'm just saying, while you're leaning in, don't go so far that you leave yourself out. And don't be surprised if you make these little changes that you get pushback. You've spent so much time doing for others, they sometimes forget to do for themselves, or they just assume you'll always do it for them. But don't let that stop you. What are you doing for yourself? Even if you don't think you have time, I would challenge that even a few minutes of doing something that makes your heart sing will go a long way. I doubt your heart sings as you're zombie scrolling on social media, as I still do at times, and it's amazing how quickly you can blow a half an hour. But what really makes you feel alive? Maybe think back to, what did you like to do as a kid? What mindless fun did you like to do? Was it coloring, walking in nature, playing guitar? What makes you smile without even realizing it and warms you right down to your soul? Whatever it is, see if you can do that, even if it's just for 15 minutes a day. And yes, you do have time. If someone said they needed you, you would drop everything to help them. So recognize that you need you. So whether it's the hard work of looking inward to find your why, or the calming work of feeding your soul inward, make time for yourself each day and treat yourself with importance like you do with everyone else in your life. Now, you'll probably feel really motivated today and you're going to take that step, but then as life and everyone's needs kick in, it'll be easy to fall back into the pattern of, I don't have time for myself, I can't do this. But you can, and you must, because you are important and worth those small acts of kindness and love for yourself that really aren't just for you. They ultimately will spill over with more energy to those around you. Everyone you're taking care of will get the benefit of you taking care of you. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope this podcast becomes one of those little things you do for yourself. So take care of yourself, little by little, and piece by piece. This podcast is based on my own life experiences. I'm not a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, or any other licensed medical professional. Please share this podcast with anyone you think needs to hear this so that we all move forward, little by little and piece by piece. And thank you, Purple Planet, for sharing your music.